We can talk about auditing the landlord's books. That's one of my favorite stories. So we make sure that a tenant has the ability to audit the landlord's books come springtime when the operating expense reconciliation statements come out. And unfortunately, that right is not always in the lease. It should be. And most landlords are good actors for the most part with this provision, but they're certainly the bad actors. And I'm recently representing a wealth advisor. I didn't represent the original lease. I'm just working with him on the expansion. And he's in a building that should be $11 probably a foot in operating expenses. And they're coming in at like almost $15 a foot. And we're like, what's going on? Yeah. And so word on the street is that the landlord's employees and the owner is actually making 401 contributions, making that inside the operating expenses, and they're actually billing some of their vacations inside the operating expenses and then passing that on to the tenants, which is one of my more dramatic stories. But a couple of years ago, one of my engineering clients, we had a right to audit the landlord's books, and some of those operating expense escalations weren't making sense. So we started digging into it, and long story short, this company was using their internal employees, to dispute property taxes for the property over the last 5 years. And supposedly that they were successful for taxes that were assessed 5 years ago. And so this landlord paid their internal employees a tax savings rebate fee of 33%. So 33% of these property taxes that they won in the negotiation table were paid to their own internal employees, right? And then they buried those consulting fees inside, not even the property tax section of the lease, because you can put controllable caps on that. And they put it in just a regular operating expense section of the lease, which is totally illegal. You can't do that. And so my client thought they owed $34,000. When it was all said and done, they actually got an $8,000 refund. So
that's a good little swing right there.
And we've even like small things like landlords are able to put their accounting software, for example, as part of the operating expenses. But we've sometimes they have a portfolio of 20 buildings, right? And they put accounting expense for 20 buildings just in one of their buildings, which they happen to own, right? So all kinds of silly things. There's thick books, Chase, there's thick books written about triple net leases and the different types of lease structures to get the tenants to pay for 100% of the operating expenses. And it's easy, you'd be forgiven to believe that this whole thing is a racket, which sometimes it feels like it is.
Yeah. Certainly. And just to dovetail on this, when you have those rights, you need to make sure you have that right as the tenant in the lease to be able to audit those books. And you want some timeframes in there to protect you. When are they delivering that to you? How long after they delivered it to you do you have to review it and let them know if you plan on auditing it? Making sure you have access to the landlord's books and under what conditions and where. Making sure you are allowed to hire a third party, a CPA, to be able to review those. And then under what conditions do you have the landlord pay for that audit if there's been some discrepancy over a certain percentage? And then if there is an overpayment or an underpayment, how's that handled? So all of that should be addressed in the lease. You want that handled. And some leases, like you said, will just not have it in there at all. Some will have it in there, but it's very vague, to the tenant's detriment in this case. And then obviously you want it to be more specific whenever you can.